How you doing?
Hey everybody, welcome to our daily COVID-19 update with the COVID-19 Accounting Task Force. That's officially our new name as of yesterday, I guess. I don't know, I'm making that up. We have the four bros on today, and our beautiful friend Amy Walker is not with us today. She's taking a break from the long week of work. But I do have here the talented Dan Luthi with a nice spot, the beautiful Chris Macksey with Prefix Accounting, and Jacob Schroeder, our inside encyclopedia on all things SBA and COVID-19, including what things not to touch so you don't get COVID-19. And I'm Michael Lee with Reconciled. So today was PPP Day, not to be mistaken for anything else you might think that stands for. Today was a special payroll protection program day where you were supposed to be able to go to your bank and get the application form and get through the process of the special PPP program that the CARES Act passed last Friday on March 27th. Last night, the SBA put out final guidance or interim final guidance, which we're assuming is final guidance to the banks and the lenders across.
It's not final guidance.
It's not final guidance.
It's not final guidance.
Yep, final guidance.
Lots of fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah,
it's like 4 dozen placeholders. It ain't final.
Yes, it ain't final. So
we're wondering how many interim periods we're going to have. Is it 12 or are we 24? Maybe we're doing half month interim periods.
and the Treasury Department, Steve Mnuchin and the head of the SBA, the administrator of the SBA, had a press conference announcing that they were putting this guidance out for the banks to respond to. Most banks have not completed their response and set up their websites to accept applications, nor their branches to accept applications. Many are receiving information in some documentation from their customers and from new customers, but that means nothing if they can't process them with the SBA to actually get money to customers. So we're going to provide some updates on the different experiences we're all having with our clients today and with the different banks that we interact with for our clients, including for our own businesses. So feel free to take it away, Jacob. Feel free to take it away. You've had a unique insight because you've been talking to bank executives in your town, as well as, I mean, you had a special call this morning, right, with all the bank executives of your region. And
in our county, we had a call this morning with all the banks came to the table and also the CPA firms, so we kind of could get all on the same page. We got a lot of insight from them on the guidance that they were receiving, right, and what that looked like, and continued conversations throughout the day. So obviously the word was everything was supposed to be wide open today, and you should be able to walk in your bank, and according to the government, walk out same day with your cash in hand. And I don't think anybody was able to walk into a bank today and walk out with cash in hand. So it does look like the SBA opened their portal very slightly, and they opened it very slowly to individual banks. And our guess in that response is they realize the demand and were afraid that their site would completely crash and not be able to handle it. So from that side, they were starting to gradually open it up. And as a result, many of the big banks didn't get the ability to submit or are not submitting, as well as some smaller banks did not get that ability to submit as well. I think Chris or Dan had an article on numbers that the SBA was saying they had received so far. Obviously, the article's probably a couple hours old. What were those looking like?
Yeah, we were seeing one article showed that Bank of America has already received, about 60,000 applicants or applications, totaling at about $6 billion in estimated loans that where people were seeking. But along with that, the SBA has only reported about a little over 5,000 loans have been received, valuing it at close to 1.8 billion. So pretty significant difference on what has been received by B of A, which was one of the largest banks who was kind of at the gate first thing ahead of everybody else, versus what they've noted that they've received. Appears with that from a dollars and cents standpoint also that they probably are processing more high valued loans first, people who have most significant need potentially, over others from that standpoint, just based off of the calculation of 60,000 applicants compared to 6 billion versus the 5,000 applicants and applications versus 1.8 billion. But with that being said, I think there's also seen a lot of chaos, I think, across a lot of the banks as they're working through it. They're trying to make sure that their, legalese is communicated correctly and that their processes are smooth going through it, which I think is definitely something we can be grateful for also through that process for people. Because I've seen a lot of banks who have sent, or, small lenders who have sent out, hey, give us your application and then we'll get back to you with what we need. And as helpful as that may seem to some people, it's not enough to really people feel confident that they're going to get where they need to be. Talking with someone earlier today, they submitted the initial application to their bank or their financial institution, but there was no hard documents that were required at that point in time. So they're no better off than anybody else right now in the queue, because that means that their application hasn't been filed or processed or anything like that. It's just sitting on a stack. That being said, I do like that there are quite a few banks that are out there right now who are actually giving guidance on this is what you need to have ready to submit, and to submit carefully once our portal opens. So I'm here in Utah. Zions Bank is a really big bank for us from a regional standpoint for quite a few states. They haven't opened theirs yet. The hope is that they'll open it today, but they've done a really good job communicating out to their customers who have, applied interest or requested interest information on here's exactly what you have to have ready when you come to the door, which I think will make the process a whole lot smoother than having to go back and forth 5 or 6 times waiting for that process.
It's I struggle a lot with the way this happens. This is happening because the reality of it is that a lot of people that actually really need this money are not going to be the first ones to get this money, because it's going to be prioritized on the people that have the most amount of employees, and generally those larger companies have much better backing. And so I keep hearing about how there's like these minimum loans that need to happen, and I know that for my client base, most of these businesses might only have maybe 12 to 15 employees, and I worry that they're not going to be able to get into this because they don't have a big bank, or they don't have they're not working with one of these private lending institutions that are currently open for business.
So I think the interesting thing to think about too, though, as we think about the big businesses, Wells Fargo hasn't started processing yet, but they say they have a 40,000 daily limit on loans, right? So if they can submit 40,000 a day, but across their number of branches, that's not that many. So you go to a smaller lending institution, and even if you get in hours later or even a day later to your smaller institution, you may be ahead of the person at Wells Fargo just because the vast number at Wells Fargo, right? When you start doing math that way, it could be really interesting from that side of things of where does it make sense to do that at, right?
Yeah, so what's also interesting too is the fintech players have all announced that they're taking applications either directly, like I just got an email from Cabbage saying they're taking applications and will let us know of eligibility. But we also have fintech players who are partnering with an SBA lender directly who are taking applications. And I know there are some banks who have partnered with Cabbage to take applications. And so this is definitely interesting where you see some banks who don't have online forms on their website at all, or don't have done that, don't have the ability to. And then you have fintech players who have those forms, but they don't have the SBA credentials of approved lending. So those are interesting things where you're going to see fintech players reach out. And so I've seen them from Divvy, Veeam, Cabbage, Fundera, multiple players, where partnerships are occurring, where people are trying to find multiple places to partner with. It'll be interesting to see what success happens over time. And then you'll see banks who have prioritized their current customers and even defined what that priority would mean. So Bank of America, for example, is prioritizing their current customers and will only allow you to submit an application through their website if you have a deposit relationship and a lending relationship with them that includes a credit card, that can include a business credit card. So it's very interesting to see what the process is looking like right now. And there are not many that we've heard of that are actually successfully getting through the real full PPP process, besides just giving the information to their bank and their bank saying they will get back to them on when the PPP application is done and submitted to the SBA.
We did just get notification, or I did, that we have word that a business got funding today from a bank. So there is a potential that somebody did get that out there. Don't want to discount that, but it doesn't sound like very many have, for sure. This is the first one I've heard of. So I think that's a big move for sure. If somebody has got funding and a step in the right direction.
Well, I think the note to that too, the thing that makes that one, I think, and maybe that's part of the uniqueness that goes along with it, is it appears that person already had an existing SBA loan. So there's value in that, right? I mean, to some of these banks who are saying, we're only going to take you, or we're only going to include you if you have a loan or have, they're measuring risk, right? As they're trying to determine that. And in those situations where there's already an SBA loan associated with you, they've already predetermined heavily the risk that you have within your, within that banking institution. And so that's great. I mean, that's definitely going to add some speed for those people who are getting, moving through everything quicker and processing from that standpoint. So I think that's wonderful that those people are getting it. Hopefully by middle end of next week, people will start seeing this money hit in their bank accounts quicker and be able to start utilizing that money to keep their businesses going.
How are you guys seeing the accounting software vendors like Intuit or Xero or FreshBooks or any of the accounting software vendors? How are you seeing, or have we heard or seen how they're playing or helping the small businesses that use their software to do this? How are you seeing that play out?
So Intuit sent out an email this morning saying they were going to take steps to make this easier for their small businesses that are on the Intuit platform, especially those that are using Intuit Online Payroll. They also had a post on the Firm of the Future site today as well. So I think that's the big thing. So they sent some stuff out that they are working on something in that regard. I don't have the email in front of me. I forget exactly what it says. I don't know if one of you does, but they are definitely taking steps to make this process smoother. I mean, we've already seen that for sure from the other payroll providers. So it doesn't surprise me to see them to step up into that space.
They're uniquely positioned though, because they also have QuickBooks Capital, as well as the fact that they're a payroll provider. Right. So they can pretty much go and look at both of these two platforms and get all the information they need,
When we see Veeam and Divvy taking the steps they have, it shocked me, like Gusto, ADP, Paycor haven't built one of those partnerships where it's a simple click of a button and it's there. As a note, beware of your payroll providers' prepared reports. They may not be calculating correctly. We've seen a couple that do not. So just beware of that and look at that and confirm that you're getting the right numbers.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these payroll providers are using the same information that we have and having to kind of figure this out on their own in a very short amount of time that normally they would have a lot more people looking at. So they're kind of like bootstrapping this as much as we are.
And I mean, there's some banks that have clearly said, we're not processing for a little while. We don't have time to. Chase came out and said that. They started accepting applications today, but they said yesterday and last night that they were not planning to process till, I forget when they said. I mean, it's next week at the earliest. US Bank put out today, they were telling people, you can submit your applications this afternoon, and the second round of data collection will happen next week. So they were being very front, like, you can have the psychological benefit of submitting an application, but we're not really doing anything until next week. So from that standpoint, I think we just need to be realistic on our expectations of these.
Yeah. Well, that's, there's $350 billion, so it's a lot of money. And it seems like not all of it was taken today, not even close. Maybe 1 billion, maybe 2 at most, depending on the bank. So you want to make sure you get it right. Are you guys seeing now that most people were using 2019, but that there are banks now letting you just use the rolling 12, the past 12 months? And what does past 12 months mean? Does that mean March? Does it mean February? Does it mean up to February 15th? That's the end month. Like, what does past 12 months mean? And then how are you guys dealing with clients that are on PEOs or leased employee arrangements? What are you seeing there? So I'd love to answer those two questions.
I'll give 2 cents on my side, and I know Jake has been dealing with this a whole lot more than me on this space. It's funny. Every bank that I feel like my clients are talking to are looking for very different things. Just got off the phone with one who's a more regional based bank. It's a rolling 12 for them, and they have this spreadsheet that they want you to fill out, and they're giving even context regarding forgiveness and what's expected from that standpoint, even though we really don't have a full disclosure on what's expected for the forgiveness portion either. From one of our other banks that we've looked at, that we've discussed with, it's actually, they want 15 months of information, and they're already asking for Q1 2020 941s also, which
no one's filed.
Good hell, it's the 3rd of April after the quarter's complete. Like, number one, no payroll provider has even finalized that because they have to validate the data that's been processed. So that's a huge kind of piece from that standpoint. And and we are seeing a handful that are looking for the rolling 12 and things from that nature. But I think it's very specific, and I think even more. I mean, we've been harping on this for the whole week. Make sure you're getting both sets, in my opinion, right now, and make sure you get a good list from your bank and you start focusing on that so that you're not scrambling once the ball drops.
So what I'm seeing is the more risk adverse banks actually want 2019 because that's the only thing that they can confirm. And they're actually asking lenders who have never looked at a payroll report in their life to confirm payroll numbers to issue a loan on, right? So therefore, they want something that's been filed with the government. The unrealistic ones want first quarter of 2020. Then you tell them that's not going to be available until the end of the month because, let's be honest, those are not going to get done. Let's just be honest here. So then it's like, oh, well, no, then we have to go back and we have to step back. So I think banks are coming to that realization. There's also the thing, if you go into the lender and you start looking at the lender side of the guidance last night, the interim ruling, it says the banks must certify to the prior year's payroll records. So they must look at the prior year's payroll records. Proceedings calendar year is the way it's worded. Preceding calendar year is the way it is worded in the interim guidance. So there's a lot of things to say that they should be looking at preceding calendar year. And I think what do lenders do in terms of loan underwriting? So confirm dollar amount of average payroll costs for the preceding calendar year by reviewing the payroll documentation submitted with the borrower's application. So if your lender is not doing this, I'm going to say they are not following the interim guidance. So this is really challenging, right? And yes, they're adapting to this as well. But I think it's pretty clear here they're asking for preceding calendar year. And these are where the banks that I've talked to, the executives, the ones I've talked with, when we start discussing this, they come to the realization that's what they should be looking at pretty quickly, right? That being said, bigger banks are going to do what they want to do. It comes down to the bank here. They get to make up the rules. So that is why we're relying on preceding calendar year, because of that direct guidance to the lenders. So we are pushing most of our clients that way, in addition to the fact the records are actually there. So obviously different people are going to read this different ways, but that is definitely where we have come to that understanding.
Yeah. I think for me, the main basis with all of that, of course, too, I mean, it focuses around the required information that has been submitted on a federal basis. Make sure, whether your bank sends it to you in a preliminary thought process or not, make sure you have those that 940 and the 941s for 2019. That's huge. I mean, that's going to be enormous in making sure you're better prepared. Making sure your summary documents tie to those as well. Definitely going to be super crucial, because they're going to scrutinize that and they're going to want to evaluate those. On our PEO clients, I know that, Michael asked a little bit about that. He deals with a lot more PEO clients than I do. But one of the things that we've been telling them is, in those situations, you're not going to be able to get a 941 or a 940, because that's not how the structure for PEOs are set up. And so getting as much detailed employee documentation is actually super crucial. Making sure you have all of that framework and organized as quickly as possible is going to be crucial. So get that summary information. Either get it from your portal or request it from your manager or your account rep at your PEO, but make sure you have it by employee. Make sure you have it clearly for those periods, and make sure that it's organized so it becomes easy. The biggest thing that I've seen on my side is we usually have clients that go from PEOs to non-PEOs or vice versa. You have to make sure that in that year you have a reconciliation between the two of those. Gotta have a very good, clean summary report as it compares to it, because some of our clients banks are also asking for financial statements, and so they want to vet that information against the lending detail.
Hey, Dan, before we go any further, I want to bring up one issue with the rolling 12 months. And that is in the final interim guidance, when they talk about what is excluded from payroll cost. In this section here, so federal employment taxes imposed or withheld between February 15th and June 30th, including the employees and employer's share of FICA, has to be removed from your total payroll cost. So know that if you're doing a rolling 12 months, you have this weird 46 days right now, or actually it's a little more if you're going through the end of last month, that you need to remove federal income taxes imposed and withheld from your cost when you calculate your loan. So this is a real issue if you're trying to do a rolling 12 months, that this little piece is there. You don't have to remove this any other time. Hey, Hector.
Hector's trying to figure out his camera. It's all over the place.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, guys. I just wanted to jump in and say hi. So I took a picture of my office in the background, and I'm using a virtual background using the real picture of my actual background.
Well, thanks for joining us, Hector. It's Friday. I know you just did a webinar today for a bunch of people on how to make money through this process and help clients through this process. Interesting. It's interesting. Would love to hear your experience today with the banks and the clients that you're interacting with and the banks you're interacting with.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off my webcam because I don't think it's working well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I got so many things to say, and we got like 5 minutes, right? So I successfully logged into Bank of America this morning, and I applied for the loan at 8 a.m. My banker told me the link is up. I went up at 8 a.m. I did it, then it crashed for a little bit, and then it came back up. Now, when I did it, it had absolutely no hiccups. And I didn't know why. I didn't realize why, because I have a business account and a credit card account with them. Then I called all my clients that had Bank of America, and I said, guys, let's get ready for that sweet, sweet free government money. Let's go to bankofamerica.com and let's get all this set up. And the first client that I tried to do it for, he doesn't have a credit card or a loan. so it didn't let him go in. So that was a really big disappointment. I haven't been so embarrassed in my life. So I tried a different client, the same thing, and then I realized afterwards that it was like a sort of this virtual condition that the bank put that said you have to have an existing banking relationship. And I thought it was dumb, but now I understand it. See, the only reason why they were the first bank is the reality is the banks were not ready. They were not given the tools to be ready to do this. So Bank of America said, you know what? People that have a loan or a credit card, we have all their information. We got their social security number of the owners. We have credit history. So they don't have to go through a verification process like every other bank would do. And the amount of fraud, and I've been saying this for a while, the amount of fraud that you're going to see come out of this is going to be astronomical. This is going to be the great American heist of fraud. And the government's not going to talk about it at all, because it would be very embarrassing to tell people that you pass a $2 trillion bill in which, $2 trillion bill in which was going to give people immediate relief and somehow not have any errors and not have fraud. That's nonsense, right? No underwriting criteria, no credit checks, no collateral. I mean, it's madness when it comes to banking. And I used to be a bank, and it makes no sense. So I think BOA was smart by creating that little limit. They're not doing it because they think that only their elitist clients with credit cards are the ones that deserve it. They're doing it to also buy themselves some time. That reduces the amount of potential people that can crash their website. And what's good is now Bank of America can reward the people that have been paying the bank income, right? Because the bank makes income through interest. So only their paying clients, their profitable clients, are the ones they're going to do this for. So I'm actually not against it. I mean, I'm bummed out that the communication wasn't clear, that people are very disappointed. I'm bummed out that Mnuchin came out on TV yesterday saying these are going to be same day funding. When I said that, I was like, am I hallucinating? Or did the Secretary of Treasury said that there's going to be same day government free money funding, no verification, no collateral? So it was.
Did you see the SBA administrator in the background, just like giving like the shifty eyes the whole time? Like, what is he talking about?
Right. I think he's getting, without getting political, I think he's learning a little bit from his boss. That you can just say whatever you want, and then somehow because you say it, it becomes true. But to give credit to Bank of America, they were up before anybody else was. So I think that's great. And apparently the little banks, the random, useless community banks were the heroes today, right? Because they were nimble. They were
useless community banks.
Yeah, they were nimble. They were small. They didn't have all this bureaucracy. They took the risk. They won the business. And now a whole bunch of people are going to these little community banks for this loan. And the community banks are smart. They're saying, we need to fund this. And by the way, it's a made-up rule, total made-up rule. We need to fund this in a separate bank account so you can track your payroll expenses. That's actually outside of the scope of the law.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not in the scope of the law, but it actually is a really good idea for 99% of the people that are getting these loans. And from a bank perspective, that's actually gives them a lot lower risk on the forgiveness side. Because remember, at the 7-week mark, before even 8 weeks is up, the bank can ask the SBA to buy the portion of the expected forgiveness. So if they're forcing their customers to use that, they have a better way to estimate how much truly covered expense is out of there that they can then ask the SBA to buy from them at the 7-week mark.
Why would you buy a loan at a 1% rate?
Well,
because of the guarantee.
So the SBA is going to pay you back for those loans. So you want to bring that money back in so you can lend it out again, because that's the forgiven amount. So they want the potential forgiven amount to come in 7 weeks instead of waiting till 60 days after June 30th, when they have to actually do that reconciliation. Sometime in 60 days after June 30th, they have to get with the client, figure out what that forgiveness amount is, and then submit that to the SBA as well to get the true forgiveness. But before then, at the 7-week mark, they can actually get the SBA to buy the expected relief and give them that money ahead of time. So my guess is these banks are going to use the balances in those accounts to try to estimate a little closer about what expected forgiveness balance is. Now, granted,
I'm going to be the devil's advocate on the practicality of this.
Yep.
Because because random Joe Schmo's community bank that their online banking sucks. Like you can't, like nothing works, nothing clicks.
Hector,
You
I'm
can't
going to
sync.
challenge you and say I have community banks that are better than my Chase login.
Okay, yeah, right. In Florida, that's not the case. Like in Florida, community banks are like the laughing stock of the banking community.
Right. So
but anyway,
that's an important determination, Hector. You know, like when I have community banks that are actually better off than my Chase, and I actually push clients to them well above Chase because the service is better, the online use is better, everything about that experience is better. Those people I would expect to win over the Bank of America today.
But Jacob, so the only ones that have, so I'm gonna apologize for what I said. Community banks are amazing. They're the hardest soul of our financial system. You know, thanks to them, we're gonna come out of this economic collapse. Without them, we couldn't survive this. However, the ones that have a really crappy online banking platform, which is probably gonna be 80% of them, they're not going to have the edge, which is that customer service, because because you can't go in the branch because of social distancing. So assuming the guys are really good at phone banking, whatever that is, that could work. But let me make the point I was going to make. Let's assume, for example, that's the case. So we open up our Miami community local bank account, and we're going to use that for payroll. You think our clients are going to call ADP and change the direct deposit information for the payroll account? They're not. They're not going to do that. They're not going to go through all that hassle. So what are they going to do? They're just going to transfer the money out into their regular account because they don't want to move things around. So it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So that's, again, and also, are they going to be responsible? Are they only going to pay certain things? Now, it would be kind of cool if they would have forced us to go into an escrow account, and then the customer submits their receipt. The bank. Now, the administrative cost of this would be incredible, but that's the good part of bureaucracy, right? Bureaucracy slows things down, but it prevents waste while wasting with bureaucratic costs. But it's a different issue. But if this would have been in an escrow account where you submit your payroll timesheet or whatever, and then they approve it, and then they wire the money to ADP, and this money is truly used for what it's supposed to be used. Yeah, I guess that works. But we're accountants. We know our clients. They're not responsible. Right now, let's assume we funded 350 billion and everybody's happy, right? Everybody's happy they got their 350 billion. Now, come forgiveness time, this is going to be another nightmare. It's going to be complete bloodbath, right? Because customers sometimes are not responsible enough to pick that. So if a customer wanted to say, you know what, I want to make sure that I get this free, sweet government money, so I'm going to hire my accountant to be my fiduciary, my trustee, and keep a budget and keep me on track and make sure that week by week I'm tracking my budget to date of exactly the funds that I need to have in order to get my forgiveness. Because most of our clients in these 8 weeks, they're not going to qualify for forgiveness. And then all these banks are going to have these forgiveness loans that make them 1%, which is not attractive to the bank at all. Then you have, if this economic issue happens even longer, you're going to have people a year and a half to pay these things back. They're going to have to refire all the employees because if you're a restaurant that gets 8 weeks worth of payroll and you can't bring the employees back to the restaurant, what the hell was the point in the first place? You know? So I don't know. Again, the intent is of government funding. It's always nice, like the social engineering intent. I get it. But now that I'm seeing firsthand the execution of this is going to be a massive mess. And it's going to be indicative of how bad depending on government is. And I hope people learn the lesson that free markets are really valuable. Although I get it, it's a really difficult issue to tackle. We got to give money to people. At the end of the day, my prediction is that in a month there will be a $10 trillion bill passed, and we will all be on universal basic income for $2,500 a month, and we'll be living off the government for 6 months until the vaccine gets cured. Because this puts a little tiny band-aid on an 8-inch scar. Like this is not solving anything, I think. Yeah. And to the point, I think somebody mentioned earlier, sorry, it'll be my last rant and then I'll shut up forever. Somebody else made another point earlier, which is the people that really need it are not going to get this money. Guess what? Customers that can afford accountants, it's one category of customers, right? That's the top 20%. Then small business owners that can afford good accountants, The ones that are on top of this, the ones that are checking this, the ones that are reading this, the ones that are understanding this, the ones that are calling the banks, that's another 10%. Plus customers that have the good accountants on top of it, that on top of it have time to help the customers from now until next week, that are willing to do this for free, because 90% of these banks are not going to pay an agent because there's no process to pay the agent. That's going to be another 1%. So you got the top 1% of the small business, savvy, intelligent, with money, with resources, getting this money, and all the little Joe Schmo barber plumber that doesn't have the resources, doesn't understand, it's not savvy, it's not researching, doesn't have accountants, doesn't have a good bank or whatever, that waits 2 weeks, they really need the money, they're desperate, they're not going to get it. So again, it's proof that this thing is a massive mess.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of complications. I think, Hector, you bring up a lot of really valid points regarding the complications that we're going through and how we stay on top of it, how we organize it, how we keep, consistency, or we try to true up the functionality with it. I mean, we can go back now and say, the AICPA, what was it, 2 weeks ago, said, hey, put it all through payroll companies. Payroll companies are going to have the best way to create limitations on how the money's spent and how things go through it. And there is some truth to that, to some of the points that Hector was making, and requiring, specific bank accounts that have to be, set aside and organized specifically for payroll purposes, requiring relief from those funds and compensation going to those providers. You circumvent all of that by saying, if you're approved, the payroll provider will be the one that submits and processes those things for you. But I think to that same point, we would have just had another level of headache, because now the payroll providers would have had to build something on the back end, more complicated, in order to be able to make sure that the approvals and the submissions and the management was done, which in most cases, some of those aren't even regulated. I mean, we saw a whole issue with payroll providers earlier this year with some major payroll fraud and things like that came out that caused some major complications and brought a lot of concern to the payroll community, and trying to figure out how you set limitations or set boundaries regarding those things. Banks have to abide by certain bylaws, which helps to kind of fulfill some of the, I guess, the concern that may come across for some people from that standpoint as well. And so it definitely is a chaotic mess. It's hard to also figure out what the best strategy would be based off the timeline. I mean, people right now are in need of money. They're looking for solutions as best as possible. The federal government has thrown $2 trillion out there saying, here's a potential solution for it. And they've thrown buckets at people saying, you've got to figure out how to deal with it. Here's some money. Now, here's your boundaries that you have to comply with. I think the hope for me is that over the next, 10 days, 14 days, as we go through that period of time, that there is a better systematic approach that we can go through from this standpoint, that there is a more organized process that some of these banks will be able to go through. I know everybody's scared right now because they're trying to figure out, will there be money left on the table? We know right now that only a certain amount of applications have been accepted. Only a certain amount of people have received money. To Michael's comment at the beginning, I mean, $6 billion compared to the $300 billion that's available, there's still a lot of money on the table. We all know banks don't work on Monday, or on Saturday and Sunday too. So we know nothing's happening over the weekend for those people, other than maybe some more organization on an IT standpoint. Monday's going to be another day, and we're going to be hit another hard wave on that. And hopefully some of these banks can open up their portals to make it easier.
I wanted to add something to that. There's nothing happening over the weekend. Over the weekend is lunchtime for the scammers. Okay. Yeah. So what's going to happen over the weekend is all of our customers are going to get emails and phone calls from people pretending to work in banks, fake banks or whatever, saying, hey, we're doing SBA lending. I mean, I don't know if your bank did it, but we're doing it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're going to sound all legit. They're going to make somebody go into some portal, put their account, like which bank account would you like to get funded to? Guess what? Somebody's going to put the bank account. Upload your W-2s. Guess what? You're going to give all your employees' information away to some scammers. So our customers right now, the ones that are vulnerable, they're not listening to us, not watching, not getting any advice, got really frustrated at Bank of America. All of a sudden, some random angel comes in from another bank that's not real, a real bank, offers to help and steals all the customers' information like this. So this weekend is not going to be a quiet weekend by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing I wanted to add on the payroll companies in particular, I don't know if you guys covered this before, because the accounting task force that you guys put together here is pretty incredible. I've been listening to you guys, and I love it. And you guys have given me so many ideas. Half of the US, the stuff you talked about, I stole it and put it on a paid webinar. So I owe you guys royalties, technically. But my other
we'll be waiting for our checks, Hector.
Yeah. They will be together with a $1,200 stimulus check. Just they're gonna be in the same envelope.
Or we'll get an email over the weekend saying we got to put our banking information in from you,
Correct.
and you'll figure out how to go through that.
That's exactly it. No, but on the payroll companies, have you guys talked to the major payroll companies? Every payroll company has a different methodology to do these things.
Yeah.
Gusto.
Hector,
Gusto.
I was just having this argument and another thing about Gusto, because they are still subtracting out employer.
Well, let me go back for a second. Gusto was the first payroll company that got in front of this, that gave people resources. So my hat's off to them. Their PR, their marketing, it was great. But their financial engineer department or whatever that figured out that an employee that gets paid more than $100,000 gets completely deducted off the calculation, that was completely ridiculous.
Well, so the thing is, they want to rely upon the bill. This is what their legal teams do. We're relying upon the bill. But what they're failing to realize is the lenders have to rely upon the interim final rule. So then therefore the payroll is not going to match, and the lender should be rejecting those loans. So Gusto, by wanting to rely upon the bill, in theory, should be getting loans rejected. And that is so business friendly. And lending has to rely upon the ruling of the Treasury and the SBA, not upon the bill. The lenders are not allowed to rely upon the bill.
Actually, correction to that. The lenders are supposed to rely on the final regulation, which doesn't exist. The interim, the interim rule is the suggestion for the regulation. So this could still change. But
don't they have to rely upon that if they want to protect themselves from being sued?
They gotta rely on something. I mean, at least administratively speaking. Right.
They're not supposed to rely upon the bill. They're supposed to rely upon the guidance from the Treasury in there. So
they're technically supposed to rely on the forms and the mechanics set upon the administrator, which is the SBA. So the Treasury tells the SBA what to do. It's like the Treasury tells the IRS what to do, and the IRS pulls out the forms and the schedules and the instructions. That's how it works. The Treasury tells the SBA what to do. The SBA sets up the forms and the schedules. By the way, did you see the PPP form done by the SBA that had an expiration date of September 33rd, 2020? So technically there's no expiration date. It's insane.
Well, very exciting, everybody. We've probably done a long enough COVID-19 update. I'm sure, Hector, we're going to have you on again because you've been through this and you're still teaching that webinar, which is awesome for those who signed up. And so looking forward to learning more. You're right, Hector. I think this is not the last we're going to hear about it. We're going to hear about it for a while. And
actually, there's another one. There's another one. No, even before the other stimulus. I know you wanted to wrap it up, but if you want to shut me up, you have to end it literally because they're not going to. But the new one that's coming out next week, which is going to be a modification of this one, is going to be for self-employed individuals and sole proprietors that don't have employees, and that's going to have a different mechanic, a different calculation. My prediction is it will be net income minus depreciation up to 100,000 times 2.5. Hence, the total amount that a self-employed individual will be able to claim on the PPP is $20,833.33. That's my prediction. I might be wrong, but we need to wait until next week to see exactly what the Treasury final interim
what was that
says.
number, Hector? What was that number?
20,833.33.
So Hector, how are you handling a Schedule C that has wages as well? Because you should be able to combine wages plus net SE earnings, right?
That's what I'm doing. I'm combining wages plus net income minus Section 179 depreciation. I have to add it back because that's a non-cash expense. And then if it's beyond 100,000, I just make it 100,000. So I add the 100,000.
You're adding back the 179, but not normal depreciation.
No, because the normal depreciation it's operative, 179 only.
I think this is one of those areas, like Michael talked about. We're definitely going to need to get some more guidance on this one next week. We've seen a handful of items come out. I know the most recent application that's popped up has some context regarding this too, listed on there, and so definitely looking forward to diving into that topic next week as we go through all of this. But definitely appreciate everybody coming on today and going through everything with it. It's been awesome to be able to connect, and there's definitely appreciate you coming on, Hector, and going through all this with us. And we will see you guys all next week. Have a good weekend.
Great weekend.